Welfare. Then from Indonesia, Mrs. Retno Lestari Priyansari Masudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Then from Argentina, Dr. Carla Visotti, Minister of Health. And from Serbia, Dr. Zlatibor Lončar, Minister of Health. And from Vietnam, Dr. Win Tan Long, Minister of Health as well. We are providing simultaneous interpretation in the 6 UN languages, plus Korean, Serbian, Portuguese, and Hindi, so that you can really appreciate the rich discussion you're going to hear. After our distinguished panel have made their remarks, we'll open the floor to questions from the media. So we have a packed program, and without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Tedros to begin. Dr. Tedros, you have the floor.
Thank you, Margarita, and Your Excellency, Minister Retno. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Vaccines are among the most powerful inventions in human history. Thanks to vaccines, smallpox is no more. Polio is on the brink of eradication. And once feared diseases like diphtheria, tetanus, measles, and meningitis can now be easily prevented. And of course, vaccines have helped to change the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. But this scientific triumph has been undermined by vast inequities in access to these life-saving tools. Much of this inequity has been driven by the fact that globally, vaccine production is concentrated in a few mostly high-income countries. One of the most obvious lessons of the pandemic, therefore, is the urgent need to increase local production of vaccines, especially in low and middle-income countries. That's why in June last year, we announced our decision to establish an mRNA technology transfer hub in South Africa as a partnership between WHO, Afrigen Biologics, the Biologicals and Vaccines Institute of South Africa, or BioVac, the South African Medical Research Council, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Medicines Patent Pool, and with strong support from Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, Norway, the European Union, and the African Union. The aim of the hub is to provide a facility where manufacturers from low and middle-income countries can receive training in how to produce certain vaccines and the licenses to do so. We believe the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub holds huge promise, not just for increasing access to vaccines against COVID-19, but also for other diseases including malaria, tuberculosis, and cancer. I was honored to have the opportunity to visit the hub 2 weeks ago, and it's already producing results with Afrigen's announcement that it has produced its own mRNA vaccine candidate. Producing mRNA vaccines poses some barriers to low and middle-income countries, including their costs, the fact that they require a cold chain that's difficult and expensive to implement. It also requires a skilled and trained workforce. Currently, biomanufacturing training facilities are located mainly in high-income countries and operate on a fee-based system, putting them out of reach for many lower-income countries. That's why today, WHO, the Republic of Korea, and the WHO Academy are announcing the establishment of a global biomanufacturing training hub that will serve low and middle-income countries that wish to produce not just vaccines, but other biologics, including insulin and monoclonal antibodies. The government of the Republic of Korea has offered a huge facility that conducts biomanufacturing training locally and will expand its operations to accommodate trainees from other countries. The WHO Academy will support these efforts by helping to develop a comprehensive curriculum on biomanufacturing. The first 2 countries to join the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub last year were Argentina and Brazil. Companies from both countries are already receiving training. Last week, we announced the first 6 African countries that will receive technology to produce their own mRNA vaccines: Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tunisia. Today, we're announcing a further 5: Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, Serbia, and Vietnam. That brings the total so far to 13, and we're in discussion with several other countries. We're honored to be joined today by 4 countries that are now participating in the hub and will start receiving training from next month. But first, it's my honor to welcome His Excellency Dr. Kwon, the Minister of Health and Welfare of the Republic of Korea. Minister Kwon, welcome and thank you so much for your government support for this very exciting new initiative, and you have the floor.
Mr. Kwon, we think you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, now begin again. Dear Excellencies and colleagues, it is a great honor for Korea to be nominated as the WHO's Global Biomanufacturing Workforce Training Hub. I am overwhelmed with a sense of excitement what this means to Korea. Korea takes this chance to fulfill its important role with a sense of duty and high resolve. I convey my deepest sense of gratitude to WHO. Together with the WHO and the international community, Korea will spare no effort in training personnel from low and middle income countries to build and strengthen their own vaccine and biologics manufacturing capabilities. For Korea to be nominated as the Global Biomanufacturing Workforce Training Hub holds particular significance. Just 60 years ago, Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world. For decades, the impoverished and weak public health system used to be one of the biggest problems that the Korean government had to solve. With the help and support of the WHO and the international community, Korea has transitioned into a country with a strong public health system and a country that exports medical essentials such as vaccines and biologics. Korea deeply cherishes the solidarity that the international community has shown us during our transition. Now, Korea is ready to stand in solidarity with LMICs to share our experience. Starting in July this year, Korea plans to train 370 professionals from Africa, Asia, and South America in the field of the vaccine and biologics. And we plan to accommodate more trainees in the future. Korea will strive to support all in strengthening their capabilities to manufacturing vaccines. The continuing challenge with the coronavirus pandemic humbly reminds us of the critical needs for nations to collaborate and to stand in solidarity with one another in order to overcome this global crisis of public health system. By sharing the lessons Korea has learned from our own experience in the past, Korea will strive to support the LMICs in strengthening their biomanufacturing capabilities so that we could pay our way together towards a safer world during the next pandemic. Korea looks forward to you all for your continued support and interest. Thank you.
감사합니다, Minister Kwon, and thank you once again for the Republic of Korea's generosity in supporting this effort. And now the 4 countries that will receive vaccine technology from South African hub and receive training to produce it. We begin in WHO's Southeast Asia region with Indonesia. It's my great pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Retno Marsudi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. Mr. Marsudi, thank you for joining us today and welcome, and you have the floor. Terima kasih.
Well, thank you very much, DG Tedros, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to be back in Geneva and have meetings with DG Tedros, Gavi, and COVAX. And I'm very glad to participate in this press conference before flying back to Jakarta. Colleagues, Indonesia is one of the countries that continuously support vaccine equity, including through transfer of vaccine technology and know-how to developing countries. Indonesia's G20 presidency also includes this issue as one of the priorities. Today, I'm very pleased to hear that Indonesia and Biopharma have been trusted to be one of the beneficiaries for the mRNA vaccine technology transfer. Biopharma is the largest vaccine manufacturer in Southeast Asia, with production capacity of more than 3.2 billion doses per year. It produced 14 types of vaccine and has exported to more than 150 countries. Indonesia's ability to harness the mRNA technology will serve the regional's need for the mRNA technology-driven vaccine and therapeutic development and manufacturing. This transfer of technology will certainly contribute to equal access to health countermeasures, thus helping us recover together and recover stronger. This is the kind of solution that developing countries need, a solution that empowers, a solution that strengthens our self-reliance, a solution that allows us to contribute to global health resilience. Colleagues, this kind of cooperation needs support from all of us, and we do hope that this cooperation could narrow vaccine inequality. Our time is short. That is why our work to end this pandemic needs to be effective, so the benefit of our collaboration becomes infinite. Together, we show multilateralism delivers and brings benefit to our people. Recover together, recover stronger. I thank you.
Recover together, recover stronger. I fully agree, Minister Retno, and terima kasih. And we look forward to continuing to support Indonesia on this journey, and so that Indonesia can support the world. So terima kasih, and thank you so much for joining us in person. That's a great honor. And I understand you have other commitments, so thank you so much for joining us today, and safe travel back home. Shifting now to the Americas, it's now my honor to welcome Dr. Carla Visotti, the Minister of Health of Argentina. Your Excellency, welcome, and you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Tedros, estimados colegas. Es un honor para Argentina haber sido seleccionada junto con Brasil como los centros regionales para el desarrollo y producción de vacunas de ARN mensajero para nuestra región, para América Latina, con el objeto, por supuesto, de luchar contra la COVID-19, y no solamente por eso, sino también para otros futuros desafíos relacionados con enfermedades infecciosas. Asimismo, es un placer estar acá hoy reunida virtualmente para compartir este importante evento donde se anuncian otros receptores adicionales en otras regiones del mundo, felicitarlos y convocarlos a seguir trabajando en conjunto para este ambicioso desafío. Tenemos la convicción que, sobre el rol clave que tiene la capacidad de la producción farmacéutica diversificada para promover el acceso equitativo a los productos y tecnologías sanitarias. En este sentido, nos llena de orgullo y de satisfacción la selección de una empresa argentina de Synergium Biotech como centro de desarrollo y producción de la vacuna de ARN mensajero en la región de las Américas. Estuve personalmente la semana pasada en la planta de producción y compartieron con nosotros que en estos días están viajando a Sudáfrica para poder avanzar con este proceso que tiene el apoyo y el compromiso del Estado argentino para poder concretarlo lo más rápido y mejor posible. También tenemos la convicción que garantizar el acceso equitativo a medicamentos, a vacunas y a todas las tecnologías sanitarias es una condición esencial para promover el goce efectivo del acceso al derecho a la salud para todas las personas. Y en el contexto de la pandemia de COVID-19, un pilar clave no solo para salvar vidas, sino también para propiciar una recuperación económica y social más rápida y más justa en beneficio de cada uno de nuestros pueblos. A pesar de las grandes dificultades que tuvimos en nuestra región para el acceso a las vacunas, Sudamérica es la región del mundo que tiene mayor cobertura de vacunación y dentro de la región de las Américas, Argentina está por sobre la media en relación a vacunación. Nuestro país ha recibido más de 110 millones de dosis de vacunas y ha logrado alcanzar casi el 80% de vacunación con 2 dosis de toda la población con su esquema completo, superando así la meta propuesta por la Organización Mundial de la Salud para junio de este año, para mediados de este año. En nuestro país hemos administrado más de 40 millones de primeras dosis, 36 millones de segundas dosis, 16 millones de dosis entre refuerzos y dosis adicionales, y hemos distribuido casi 100 millones de dosis en todo el país, también habiendo donado vacunas, 5 millones de dosis a otros países de África, Asia, América Latina y el Caribe. Es muy importante ese círculo virtuoso de reciprocidad y solidaridad para poder avanzar en la vacunación. Como resultado de la mayor campaña de vacunación realizada en nuestro país, incluyendo las coberturas de vacunación que comprenden desde mayores de 3 años, se ha logrado también mejorar la situación epidemiológica, lo que permite al mismo tiempo continuar trabajando en otras áreas relacionadas a las estrategias sanitarias. Estimados colegas, América Latina cuenta con las capacidades esenciales necesarias para ampliar la producción local y reducir las brechas en el acceso a las vacunas, así como otros insumos estratégicos. Es una excelente oportunidad para demostrar cómo pueden contribuir otras regiones del mundo a abordar los mismos desafíos globales. La comunidad científica argentina, el sector público y por supuesto el Estado Nacional están listos para sumarse a este esfuerzo. Estamos convencidos que con el apoyo técnico de la Organización Mundial de la Salud, con esta decisión estratégica, con las oficinas regionales, en nuestro caso la Organización Panamericana de la Salud, la comunidad internacional de expertos y nuevamente la industria farmacéutica, el sector privado, lograremos mejorar el acceso equitativo y sobre todo oportuno a estos insumos. Si queremos lograr mejores resultados de salud a nivel mundial y a nivel regional, incluida una mejor preparación para futuras emergencias de salud, sin lugar a dudas debemos romper el ciclo de dependencia de nuestra región en un mercado mundial de vacunas altamente concentrado. Así que vamos a por ese gran objetivo. Muchísimas gracias. Un saludo grande.
Muchas gracias, Minister Bizotti. Now to Europe, and it's my privilege to welcome Dr. Latibor Lonkar, the Minister of Health of Serbia. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us today. Welcome, and you have the floor.
Zdravstvene organizacije, uvažene kolege, poštovani predstavnici medija. Republika Srbija je izrazila interes za učešće u projektu Svetske zdravstvene organizacije koji se tiče prenosa tehnologije proizvodnje RNK vakcina. Efikasnost i fleksibilnost srpskog zdravstvenog sistema koju smo pokazali u prethodnom periodu, kako u brzoj dijagnostici, preventivi, lečenju i distribuciji vakcina, lekova i medicinskih sredstava, su dovoljan i potreban preduslov da nastavimo sa daljim razvojem u ovoj oblasti. Učešćem u ovom projektu uspostavit će se nacionalni proizvodni kapacitet, a čiji je cilj pre svega povećanje dostupnosti vakcina proizvedenim primjenom najmodernijih tehnologija, a samim tim i jačanjem spremnosti i odgovora na eventualne pandemije. Transferom znanja i primjenom tehnologija za proizvodnju RNK vakcina u Republici Srbiji bit ćemo u mogućnosti da ispunimo zahteve ne samo nacionalnog, već i regionalnih, međunarodnih zdravstvenih sistema. Podrška Svetske zdravstvene organizacije u ovom procesu je od suštinskog značaja za razvoj kontinuirane, bezbedne i savremene proizvodnje vakcina. Razvoj nove tehnologije podrazumeva razvoj stručnih znanja, srpskih eksperata, obučavanje novih mladih kadrova i apsolutni je nacionalni prioritet. Tokom pandemije uvideli smo da je uspostavljanje novih tehnologija, istraživački rad, donošenje odluka baziranih na naučnim dokazima, najbitniji faktor efikasnog odgovora na sve javno zdravstvene pretnje. Zaključio bih pre svega izražavanje zahvalnosti Svetskoj zdravstvenoj organizaciji na kontinuiranoj podršci i uveren sam da ćemo nastaviti odličnu saradnju kako u ovoj, tako i u svim ostalim oblastima javnog zdravlja. Srdačan pozdrav iz Beograda i nadam se što skorijem susretu sa vama u Beogradu. Hvala.
Hvala, Your Excellency. Thank you once again for being with us today. Finally, to the Western Pacific, where it's my great pleasure to welcome His Excellency Dr. Nguyen Thanh Long, the Minister of Health of Vietnam. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us today and for Vietnam's participation in this exciting new initiative. You have the floor.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to congratulate WHO and mRNA vaccine technology transfer hub on the historic achievement made in the last couple of months, including the selection of beneficiary country of the mRNA vaccine technology transfer, the establishment of the global biomanufacturing workforce training hub in the Republic of Korea, which is also announced today. I also recognize that the MPP and the ICT co-work key partner in the initiative. On behalf of the government of people of Vietnam, I'm very glad to express our sincere thanks to WHO for selecting Vietnam to receive the mRNA vaccine technology through the WHO mRNA vaccine technology transfer initiative. This shows that WHO highly value our capacity to master the technology and produce a vaccine in large scale is a high quality. The government of the Ministry of Health of Vietnam are committed to supporting and creating favorable conditions for domestic vaccine manufacture in receiving the mRNA vaccine technology. As you may know that we have had a lot of experience in vaccine development over the past decade. Our NAR has also been recognized by WHO. We believe that in participating in this initiative, Vietnam will produce the mRNA vaccine not only for domestic consumption, but also for the other countries in the region and the world, contributing to reducing inequality in access to vaccine. The mRNA vaccine technology is an advanced technology that allows updating the vaccine to adapt to new variant more easily and be produced in large quantity. The groundbreaking technology not only help control the COVID-19 pandemic, but also better respond to future pandemics. Therefore, Vietnam hopes to continue receiving support from it to collaborate with WHO and partner to go one step further in this initiative, thereby contributing to strengthening production capacity of vaccine in the region, contributing to activity to ensure international and regional health security. And thank you very much.
Shin, come on, Minister Nguyen, and thank you once again to you, to all our guests for joining us today. We look forward to working with all of you in the months and years ahead. Our vision is that this initiative will pay dividends for many years to come and help to save many lives, because we believe it's a strategic solution to the problem of equity we're facing now. Margaret, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros and distinguished panel. We will now open the floor to questions from the media. Please try to focus your questions on the subject, technology transfer and training. But we do have our usual team of WHO experts here to ensure you get the best and most complete answers. We also have Dr. Agnès Buzyn, our Executive Director of WHO Academy, who can tell you more about how WHO will be supporting the curriculum for the biomanufacturing training. First question goes to Donato Mancini from the Financial Times. Donato, could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I have two questions for you. So I understand this may be difficult at this stage, but can you quantify the impact this will have concretely with any numbers, if that's possible? Such as, this will help make XX million doses of vaccine or XX million vials of insulin. Obviously, I understand why this is good news and big news, but I think it would help to provide context to our readers. And the second question is, critics will say this is great, but perhaps a bit late. So did you try to do this earlier in the pandemic, and did you face resistance from certain sectors, such as the industry? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donato. I think Dr. Sumia will start and others may join.
Yes, thank you, Donato, for that question. Others may certainly like to add. So, as you remember, right from the beginning of the pandemic, the WHO had recognized that the vaccine inequity or inequity in access to health products in general is a real threat and a real possibility that we needed to get ahead of. And this is why the ACT Accelerator and the COVAX facility and partnership was created specifically to address the issue of vaccine inequity. However, because of the fact that vaccines and in fact other health products, the manufacturing of these products is concentrated in some regions of the world, what we saw happening was that other regions of the world which did not manufacture products actually got into the back of the queue, and they had to wait till the regions that were manufacturing had actually supplied their own populations and then were able to spare doses. And we made a call very early on. If you remember, the DG had called for the motion at the WTO on the TRIPS waiver to go ahead, that countries should agree to do that. We had also called upon companies to share their know-how technology, either through voluntary licensing or through these multilateral mechanisms that exist. We have the medicines patent pool that does exactly that, and it has happened with some drugs, but we have not seen that happen with vaccines, except for a couple of companies that did go out and do a lot of voluntary licensing. And we saw clearly that it wasn't enough. In the whole of 2021, we were facing the supply-constrained situation where countries were unable to scale up their vaccination programs because of unpredictable supplies, and often supplies that came with short expiry dates. So this concept was launched in April of last year, and I think has moved fairly rapidly. But of course, it's complex. It requires not only developing and transferring a new technology, but it also requires a building of facilities that can handle this type of expertise and training people to do this. So we're looking at this as a medium to long-term initiative, not, as you said, necessarily solving the problems in 2022. We know the pandemic hasn't ended. We know that there may be ongoing demand for vaccines, so this project may still satisfy the demand in the future and make perhaps better vaccines with better properties available as we move ahead. As you know, one of the things we're trying to do here is to promote more R&D and sharing of information and knowledge with these networks of centers that are going to be set up, because mRNA technology is new and currently comes with a lot of limitations in usage, especially the cold storage conditions. So there could be game-changing technologies in the pipeline where mRNA could be stored at 4 to 8 degrees, for example, and also be made in ways that make it more affordable to produce these vaccines. And finally, I think this technology and this whole process of empowering and building capacity in places around the world will not only enable more work on vaccines of other public health importance like TB, like dengue, like chikungunya and other diseases, but also serve, as our backup plan for the next pandemic, so that if, and let's hope there isn't, but if there is another pandemic with another pathogen, there will be all of these distributed manufacturing sites that are capable of absorbing and quickly scaling up mRNA, so that in any one lab in the world were to develop a vaccine for that new pathogen, then within a few weeks or months, we could have capacity, we could have manufacturing scaling up very rapidly. And so I think that really is the goal with which we approached this, not necessarily to solve the problem of today, which needs to be solved basically by equitable sharing of vaccines and making sure that we address also some of the absorption constraints, the delivery constraints that countries are facing. Thank you. I wonder if anyone would like to add to that.
Dr. Mariangela Shamal, who's online, has something to add on this. Dr. Shamal, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Margaret, and thank you, Donato, for the question. Actually, I want to touch on the biomanufacturing hub and the importance it has. We don't have yet quantified the issue on diabetes like you mentioned, but let me say that the biomanufacturing hub in Korea, in the Republic of Korea, is especially important for us to deal with problems that are beyond COVID, right? And also, let me talk a little bit about the issue that we are talking about the biotherapeutics, right, for COVID. We did speak with each of the manufacturers of the biotherapeutics. There are some of them already in WHO's guidelines. And there's always an issue that's mentioned when we're talking about IP or technology transfer. There's always the issue of but the quality manufacturing capacity is not available elsewhere. So let me say that the biomanufacturing hub, as a training hub, working with the regulatory and the good practices in the manufacturing, being in Korea, will be extremely helpful for WHO and the world to tackle chronic diseases like diabetes. There's an increasing need for monoclonal antibodies, for example, for cancer treatment, for immune diseases, and so on. So we are talking about COVID, but we are talking also beyond COVID. And no, we did talk with the manufacturers, the current manufacturers, and no, there was no interest in tech transfer. So that's why this is being organized now and has a significant importance for the future on the access to affordable and safe treatments. Thank you.
Dr. Buzyn, would you like to add anything on the importance of training and the difference this is going to make?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, we are really looking forward to work with the Korean Global Biomanufacturing Workforce Training Hub, because we think that there is some place for in-person training, but also for hybrid experience with digital training to enhance the capacity building of healthcare workforce to deal with those issues of biomanufacturing. The role of the WHO Academy in this hub will be, of course, to establish the entry requirements for the learners, to define the curriculum pathway, to be able to deal with those issues, and of course, to give assessment and credentials to the learners to be sure that they gain some new skills, new competencies to ensure good quality biological products at the end. So we are really willing for this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all those comprehensive answers. The next question goes to Priti Patnaik from Geneva Health Files. Priti, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. Can you clarify whether and when other companies in other Asian countries, including, say, Chinese and Indian companies, will be able to participate in regional manufacturing activities around mRNA vaccines? Because clearly these countries do have, early infrastructure to produce these vaccines. Because it was previously indicated that some exceptions could be made while issuing licensing from the hub to exclude potentially big developing countries. Can you clarify if that's the case? Thank you.
Thank you, Priti. Dr. Martin Frieder will answer your question.
Okay, thank you, Priti. A very good question. What we are trying to avoid is to have excessive competition within countries, or to be leading to excessive competition. And so countries such as India and China, which have already, they've got some mRNA vaccine candidates already under development. And also we received multiple requests from within those countries. So we are currently working with the national government to identify what they would like us to be supporting within the country. But this will still take some time as we work out what is the most appropriate response for each country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frieder. I'm looking around the room. I think that's fully answered that question. So the next question goes to Andy Hoffman of Bloomberg. Andy, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. Just so I understand that, focusing on COVID-19 mRNA vaccines, the vaccines that will be produced under this program are the ones that you're developing from the mRNA hub in South Africa. How long will it take for that formula to be developed so it will be ready to be a vaccine and then be approved by various health authorities, including the WHO, as a vaccine? And have you completely abandoned working with and getting technology transfer from the major mRNA vaccine producers, Pfizer and Moderna? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan will start the answer on this one.
Yes, I'll start. I'm sure Martin would like to add as well. So I'll take your second question first, and that is, have we abandoned the possibility of working with the companies that have proven technologies? And we have two, the BioNTech, Pfizer, and the Moderna vaccines. No, we have not, and we would very much welcome a partnership with them, because as we were describing, the development from scratch of a vaccine does take time. And while Afrigen has, in a very short period of time, working with the academics in South Africa, been able to develop an mRNA vaccine construct based on publicly available information, this is a new construct, and therefore it will have to go through the entire clinical development program, starting with animal studies and then go through clinical trials, which means that it's not going to be really available as a vaccine that before the end of 23 or more likely 2024. This timeline can obviously be shortened considerably if a known technology, a known vaccine with proven efficacy and safety were to transfer their know-how and provide technical assistance to the hub and to the spokes, which means it's just a question of really producing that vaccine at the quality standards. And I think the South African hub has shown that it's possible to do it. So I think it's a myth that low and middle income countries cannot produce mRNA vaccines. We know now from the landscaping we've done that there are several existing sites around the world that are quite capable of producing these vaccines. So yes, I think the WHO is very open and committed to working with partners. There are a number of other companies, mostly biotech companies, smaller companies, again from around the world that have mRNA technologies in various stages of development. Some of them are advancing through phase 2, and we're talking to many of them. We're trying to work and keep track of progress in that area, so that, and they're also more open to sharing their IP, sharing their know-how. There will be freedom to operate in many countries, no restrictions with patents. The cost of goods is lower for some of these. The cost of manufacturing is lower. So there are actually second generation of vaccines coming through as well, which could be even more exciting to work with. But what we would like also to see is a coordinated approach to this. And when we mapped what's happening on the African continent, we find several dozen initiatives now by different agencies. And what would be not a good outcome is to have a very sort of a haphazard development program that is not coordinated. So WHO, we would like to offer ourselves really as a coordinator and a convener, bring together all the different groups and have a plan, because I think, as Dr. Simao mentioned, also the workforce development and the regulatory capacity of these countries are very critical components, and we cannot be successful if we do not have a plan to both have a high quality regulatory system in place, an agency that's at least at WHO maturity level 3 by the global benchmarking system, as well as a workforce that is trained in good manufacturing practices. And this is why we really are very excited to have this partnership with the Republic of Korea to immediately start training the workforce that's going to be needed in all of these facilities. And just to go back to an element of Preeti's question, we do not exclude anyone from, because the hub really is for sharing of technology. So I don't think any country that's interested or wants to have the technology will be denied that. We're obviously, WHO is mandated to work with all of our member states, and we will definitely do that. It's just a question of, with some countries, it's all the details are already available and we can move very quickly, like the ones that have been present today. And with other countries, we need a little more dialogue with the manufacturer and with the government before we can advance further. Thank you. Martin, would you like to add?
Maybe just, I think Sumya's really addressed most of the issues, but maybe just to add one or two additional points to this, that ever since the announcement of the hub in South Africa, there's been tremendous interest from biotech companies, many of which, or several of which, are in medium to late stage clinical development with their own mRNA vaccines. And they've now come to the hub proposing collaboration on their second generation technologies, which have certain advantages, either in terms of thermostability, in terms of cost of production, ease of production, and freedom to operate in low and middle income countries. So when we look at the African the chart of development, they will be in clinical trials later on this year with the first candidate. Whether that is the candidate that is taken through to late development and approval, or whether it's going to be a second generation candidate which has technical advantages, I think that will depend a little bit on the deals that are signed and also the development of the pandemic.
Thank you very much for those answers. We are getting close to the hour, so we've only got time for one more question, and that will go to Jessica Hagen from Pharma Forum. Jessica, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. I really appreciate it. I am Jessica Hagen from Pharma Forum, a UK-based digital health magazine. How will these hubs evolve as new variants appear that may prove to be able to evade vaccines? And will the trainees' education for such circumstances evolve as well?
So Dr. Sumia will begin with that answer.
So I didn't hear the second part of the question, but I think the first one was about how will it evolve as the new variants are evolving. And clearly that's a global problem. And as you know, the WHO has set up the committee, the TAG COVAC, which is constantly monitoring the situation and is working with the other committees across the House, the TAG-VE and SAGE and the R&D Blueprint expert groups, to track what's happening with the not only the evolution of new variants, but also how is that impacting the effectiveness of the existing vaccines. And we're also looking at some of the research that's coming out of the companies that are trying to manufacture either bivalent or multivalent vaccines. So I think during this period, we have a lot of research going on multivalent COVID vaccines, but also work going on pan-coronavirus vaccines, which ultimately is going to be, I think, what everyone would like to see as a solution. But that's probably a couple of years away. So I think the idea of having these hubs and spokes and having the expertise available is the ability to quickly pivot and to absorb the technology, so that when WHO, the committee TAG COVAX, if they make a recommendation to change vaccine composition, just as we do for influenza every year, then it will be possible for these sites to also do that. And that's the advantage of the mRNA technology, that it will be possible to adapt to the new variants if the need arises. So far, as you know, the vaccines have held up very well against all variants, including Omicron, as far as severe disease is concerned. And while there is some waning of immunity over a period of time, and particularly in the older age groups, the third dose, helps to reinforce that immune response again. So, so this is why I think the ongoing tracking of the research and development, as well as encouraging development of vaccines for tuberculosis, for example, for which we really don't have a good vaccine. We still use a 100-year-old vaccine, the BCG, and if we were to use all the investments that have been made for COVID, there are huge amounts of R&D investment that have gone into COVID. We need to really leverage that to produce vaccines for some of these other diseases for which we've struggled for a long time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swaminathan. I think Dr. Shamal has something to add.
Very quickly, thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for the question. It's regarding the training. One of the things Sumia just referred to is actually we had platforms that were ready to be repurposed, not the mRNA. The mRNA platform was already developed for other, still in research and development phase. But in the case of the training, we are talking about capacity building. And this is super important. That means good manufacturing practices, international recognized quality assurance, reference labs, and so on. This is all part of an infrastructure that needs to be ready for whatever variant, whatever pandemic comes up, whatever pathogen we're trying to address. So the training is actually extremely important at this stage to create the infrastructure in terms of human resources and of equipments in order to be able to respond to any changes or to any production issues that come up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shamal. Now we're running out of time, so we're just asking some of the distinguished panelists if they've got final remarks. And I hear that the Minister from Argentina, Dr. Carla Visotti, has got something to say. Please take the floor, Dr. Visotti.
Muchas gracias. Simplemente poner en valor esta reunión, poner en valor la iniciativa de la Organización Mundial de la Salud, el objetivo de este desafío, pero también los espacios de difusión, porque es muy complejo el desafío, es muy compleja la dinámica de producción de vacunas, las tecnologías de ARN y la dinámica y lo variante de justamente las variantes en este caso el coronavirus, pero las potencialidades de emergencia de nuevos virus y de nuevas situaciones pandémicas está, por eso es tan importante el seguir trabajando ininterrumpidamente para que ante otra situación estemos en una mejor posición. Y en relación a este desafío de comunicar con los medios y la participación y el interés de los medios, también ponerlo en valor porque es tan complejo y el desafío de comunicarlo también es grande, que realmente tener en una videoconferencia la Organización Mundial de la Salud, ministros de varios países, el compromiso político de ser parte de la producción regional de vacunas para una nueva situación de emergencia sanitaria es muy importante, y los medios son un puente para que la población sepa que seguimos trabajando en este sentido, y para que la población sepa que es bien difícil, que es bien complejo, que no se resuelve en 2 minutos, y que el compromiso global para ir mejorando paso a paso está ahí, y es un compromiso de los organismos internacionales, de los países, de los Estados miembros en forma individual, y este círculo virtuoso para que se pueda mostrar este trabajo es relevante. Así que felicitaciones y muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Health Minister. And we also have some final remarks from the Minister of Health and Welfare, Republic of Korea, Mr. Kwon. Please take the floor, Mr. Kwon. You may be muted. We can hear you now, I think. Can you start from the beginning?
네. 네, 방금 여러 가지 질문들이 있었었는데요. WHO의 지금 2가지 계획, 중저소득국의 백신 자급화를 위한 mRNA 기술 이전 허브와 인력 양성 허브, 오늘 한국을 지정을 해줬는데 2가지 지금 허브를 추진 중에 있습니다. 이 mRNA 기술 이전 허브는 백신 생산 시설의 인프라 구축과 또 특정한 백신 기술을 전수하는 역할을 하는 거고, 인력 양성 허브는 백신 바이오 이런 의약품 생산 공정 전체에 대한 교육 훈련을 제공하기 때문에 이 2가지 허브는 매우 중요한 연관을 가지고 있습니다. 따라서 WHO와 한국은 이 교육과정을 어떻게 할 것인지 운영위원회 등을 구성을 해서 교육과정의 개발과 또 글로벌 협력체계 이런 구축 방안에 대해서 논의를 해 나가도록 하겠습니다. 우선 7월부터 아까 말씀드린 대로 글로벌 인력 370명에 대해서 바이오 생산 공정 교육을 하고, 단계적으로 기반 확충을 통해서 25년 이후에는 이것도 WHO와 협의가 필요합니다만 연 2,000명까지 교육을 할 수 있도록 그렇게 준비를 해 나가도록 하겠습니다. 앞으로 WHO의 아카데미 등과 해서 이런 부분에서 차질이 없도록 하겠다는 말씀을 드립니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for those remarks and for all the rich discussion. I'll now hand over to Dr. Tedros for his final remarks.
Thank you so much, Margarita. Maybe just would like to comment on one of the questions asked, especially on how long it will take to complete the process of the formula developed by the South African Hub or Afrigen. As Soumya said, it could take more than 2 years because it's new and it should go through the whole process starting from the animal model. However, this process could be shortened if the current holders of the patent for mRNA could share their formula, or if IP could be, the intellectual property could be waived, which WHO still supports, because that will cut the process significantly, and for the South Africa Hub, it would take around 6 to 9 months to complete the process. So the fastest would be to share or to waive IP. That's what we're trying to do as an option. We haven't dropped that. We're talking to the companies, and also, as you know, the negotiation in the WTO is ongoing. That was proposed by South Africa and India, and we hope we will get something out of the negotiation with the pharma industry or with, through the WTO process. This pandemic is unprecedented, and whatever provisions we had for emergency like this one, like the IP waiver, if we cannot use them now, when do we use them? This is unprecedented, and they have to be tested now, actually, in terms of IP waiver. And we want to make that very, very clear. But while pushing for that, of course, we need to move with the process we have started, which is the new product that Afrigen has already developed. So all options will be open. But then my appreciation to all ministers, to Minister Kwon of Korea, Minister Marsudi of Indonesia, Minister Visotti of Argentina, Minister Lonchar of Serbia, and Minister Nguyen of Vietnam. Thank you so much for joining us. I think this is a long road, a vision that, if translated into action, could address the could address the problems we are facing now, equity. And we believe it's a strategic solution, and look forward to working with you even more closely to realize this vision. So thank you so much for joining. And thank you also for all media members who have joined today. And see you in our next presser. Thank you.